Hello, everyone. I'm Michele DeLuca, and this is my friend Nancy Proulx. We are the Power Portal podcast, and we talk about all matters of personal power, personal growth, and human potential.
Okay.
We're both looking forward to this podcast today because we're talking about Michael Singer's book, a bestseller, The Surrender Experiment. Michael Singer has written a number of books about human potential and personal development. This one struck home particularly for both of us because of that word surrender. So
Yeah, and he really gave so many examples in the book. It was more than just technique; it was how he lived his life, and an example of extreme surrender to not only life source, but how it turns out for him. But when we think about surrender, we both had some different ideas on what surrender was. For me, I feel that surrender is that connection to flow, to source, that we're supposed to be a fountain where we plug into source and we let source move through us, and that is the co-creation process. Now, I didn't always have that idea that this is what surrender meant.
okay, and that brings me because when I first heard the word surrender, and I've been reading it in more and more books by mystics and spiritual philosophers talking about the word surrender, I have a real reluctance to kind of embrace that word, and I think a lot of people do.
but but really, surrender is about doing less work and yet letting that flow come through us. Like, think about how the example they always get, if the ocean is the universe, do you bring a bucket or do you bring the hose that you connect to it, that there's always enough.
Lovely. I love that analogy.
Yeah, versus I think when I first started, it was about, oh my God, I gotta give up everything I love in my life.
I felt surrender. The same way, Nancy, and I thought, I don't want to give up my past, and I don't want to give up my future. I don't want to give up my thoughts. Yeah. And yet Michael Singer in the Surrender Experiment did all of that, because he found this place where in the present, in the emptiness, he could silence that little voice, which so many philosophers, spiritual philosophers especially, say is not so much us, that the real us is the aspect of our soul that lives within us, that animates us, and that our minds, our little minds, are kind of a collection of thoughts and beliefs we've picked up on the way.
Mm-hmm.
So when you read The Surrender Experiment, what were your original thoughts? What drew you to his philosophy?
Well, first of all, I remember when I read the first couple chapters, I had texted you, and he had gone into a little bit of an excluded area of living in the woods where he meditated all day long, and he left his job, and he did all of this stuff to just create this quiet space around him, and he just sat in this beautiful place. And I remember when I studied with Caroline Myss, she said that it was easy for a nun in a monastery, or a monk in a monastery,
or a mystic
in a monastery, to stay in that place of peace and connectedness, because there was no distractions. But she said, we in humanity are called to be mystics without monasteries, meaning that we need to take these tools and take them out into the world. We have to develop them maybe in a time of quiet and peace, and give ourselves that room to develop them, and then go out into the world and try to see if we can hold that place.
I love those thoughts. When I first met Michael Singer in his book The Untethered Soul, there was another reason I wasn't drawn to it. It was because he didn't tell me who he was. He didn't tell me his life stories.
Mm-hmm.
And in the surrender experiment, he takes us deep into, he was a kind of hippie child. He was a college doctoral candidate heading to be an economics professor.
Brilliant genius.
And in fact, he accidentally fell upon this thing happened to him one day when he was talking to his brother-in-law, where he suddenly understood that he was the observer watching his thoughts. There had been a break in their conversation, and he observed himself saying, oh my God, there's a break in our conversation. What am I going to talk about? The weather. And he was able to observe whatever this was, observing him. And he came to understand that this was the place he wanted to be living from, the place of the observer, to still that never-ending mind that's always talking and complaining and saying you have to do this, to still that mind and tap into what you call the divine force or the power of the
and it's interesting that he uses the word observer, because we want to be the observer while we're in our body. We don't want to watch our life from that disassociated observer place. Right. So I don't know if he explains that in there, because we don't want to just observe. I think
observer
our life
might have even been my word. I'm not sure if he uses that word, but the point is that he wanted to be living from a place. He really loved that stillness, and he found more of that when he found Zen Buddhism, where he found a way to just meditate. And I think he used the word mu, M-U. And he would sit and feel the vibration in his belly and his breath coming in and out, and lose himself for hours on end. And I think it was through that process he decided to begin to let life do life. Just let life be. And then to just say yes to life, whatever came into his life. He said yes to. When he found himself a deserted plot of land, he built a little hut where he would meditate, and then people started coming slowly, one by one. Everything in him resisted the people coming, and they wanted to meditate on Sunday morning with him, and yet he allowed life to do life. And this behavior is what brought him ultimately to very unexpected success as a corporate billionaire, which is described in the book and is quite stunning.
What I loved is that he did have a lot of challenges, even though he gave his life up to living from his higher self and from his connection to source. It still brought challenges to his life, and big challenges, because really what we're meant to do is strengthen that connection to our higher selves through the challenges in the external world.
And so ultimately be grateful for the challenges.
Yeah, and to have faith and trust while we're going through the challenges, and not only faith and trust, but if we can be in that body, and the more we practice the silencing or the recognizing of the fearful voice or that mind, that is that lower mind that is speaking, that we can feel below it, deeper into it, and deeper into ourselves, and stay connected, so that we can kind of move through a difficult situation with knowing that I'm listening for the way out of this, and I am going to have patience, and that I trust that the universe will turn in the right direction and bring what is needed.
We talked about it earlier before we turned the camera on, that when you give in, it's not really a clearing of your mind. It's an opportunity to kind of move things out so that your best creative life, your best ideas, your highest creativity can unfold, can drop in.
Can I give you an example here?
Please.
So I'm running an activity with another woman, and my idea, what I was really attached to on the theme, was shot down by her. And
not gently, right?
No, not gently at all. And so I had I was like, my ego got up in the way, and like, do I just bail out of this in the beginning? Do I how do I handle this? And then I kind of sat with it, and I can recognize that when I have that energy that's coming up in me, and that thought, that's my ego.
And it feels very disruptive. You can feel your heart beating a little faster, and like, oh, she's never going to let me have my, why am I even wasting my time on this? She's going to be bossing me around.
I don't need this, and all of the, who needs this? And I decided to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to surrender to this, because maybe there's something I need to learn out of this. And you know, maybe, and I said, maybe it is a chance for me to practice my centeredness with somebody, and maybe my centeredness may even help this person too, that there might be a give and take. And so I ended up saying, you know what, I let it go, and I said, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I came up, it was so interesting, I came up with a new theme, and an amazing theme that we're going to do
for your event.
For this event. And I was brushing my horse the whole time, and I was with my horse, and all this inspiration came in because I was relaxed and in the moment. And she loved it. She absolutely loved it. And so we're going forward with that.
Oh,
so
that's beautiful.
Maybe something better even came in.
Yes. And we talked about this earlier too, about how much of this applies to your work with horses. Yeah. Kind of the letting go, the allowing, and being centered. Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, so my one horse that I have right now, she came to me with some baggage. And, you know, Michele and I were talking about, you know, we have to allow ourselves this space to learn to let go, to learn to relax, to learn to recognize our programming, our fears. Michael Singer does this. He goes into exclusion. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, exclusion. Yeah.
And spends years there in this space. Well, when my mare came to me, the only thing she wanted to do was, when I started to teach her how to relax, all she wanted to do was go out into the ring and just sit and go very, very deep into herself. And it's taken a year or two, you know, for her to kind of really move through, where now she could relax, but she wants to move.
Interesting.
So we have to allow ourselves.
I had expressed to you earlier that at this part of my life, Michael Singer appeals a lot more to me, because now I'm really devoting myself to understanding why we're here, and the mastery of not being caught up in the monkey mind that's going like, wow, wow, wow. And my son sent me Michael Singer. My youngest son, Luke, sent me Michael Singer tape, and he and his brother have since started listening to Michael Singer. And so I was mostly going back to Michael Singer because I was delighted that my adult sons were listening to something so life nourishing. And then I really started to listen once again, and Michael Singer and I met on the same wavelength. I too want to go to a place where I am completely tapped into my own connection to life, or the universe, or the divine, the giant wise ocean of energy that seems to animate all of us if we take the time to tap in. And P.S., by coincidence, I started reading some other books this week too. R.J. Spina has written a super healing book. I'll put the title below. And he talked about the sentient being which is our soul within us. And he gave a meditation experience that I thought was so unique that I tried it and was like, my goodness, that works. And all he said was, once you relax, put your hand on your chest, and where your sentient being, where your soul lies in his understanding, and then feel that soul, that sentient energy come up and touch you back from within yourself. And something about that idea of this wise person, this wise energy, not really the person is me, the wisest aspect of myself, touching my outward self from within, was such a visual and it was such
visceral,
a visual and visceral experience that I went, wow. And he did the same at the top of your head. Now imagine that. It's not quite as compelling for me because I'm going to have to work on it, but imagine that soul energy that resides within us. Once you clear the mind, clear the pathway for this connection, rising up and tapping your fingers at the top of your head where your connection begins to all of life that is out there and is working on behalf of our best lives in whatever way it can. Because as we also discussed, sometimes our best lives they don't feel like the best life.
Well, the example is when I first purchased Diana, who ended up coming to me with a lot of problems, very shut down. And she ultimately led me more to a connection with the divine because she had to teach me about flow because it was blocked in her. And in order for me to learn about it, she, even though she was shut down, she still knew way more about flow than I ever knew. Okay. And one of the things that I have done with her you can actually feel that energy that you were talking about. And I will walk with her and I will stop her. And then I will wait to feel that energy. It's an actual energy that comes through us, that moves through us like a wave. Okay. And those are the opportunities for when we're in flow, we can feel when we need to make a transition or change. And for me, how the horse showed me about this is that when I went to step forward, if she did not step forward with me, I was imagining I was feeling it.
Oh.
But if I was really in flow and felt it, she would move her leg exactly at the same time that I was moving mine. And we would be in flow. And she's like, okay, yeah, you're getting it. You're feeling it. So ultimately, what we want to do is be able to be so connected and clear to that channel that we could surrender to that energy. And those are when we have the chance, the possibility to make a change. And as we get clearer and clearer within ourselves and we go deeper and deeper within ourselves, those possibilities get bigger and we have more possibilities.
I love that. As compared, because you said earlier when we were talking that as compared to really kind of wanting Diana to move, and Nancy is an equestrian and a competitor, but she's also moved into animal healing later in her life after she trained with Caroline Myss. So she's, the fact that Diana came to you later and still had more to learn is the best part of it, because no matter how accomplished we get in our lives, there's always so much more to learn.
It was the next level. So, my business was called Equine Essence. It was, connecting with the horse, and then ultimately connecting with myself to the horse. And then ultimately she was teaching me how to connect with the divine or the universal flow of energy. So it has just been this continual journey. So what looked as like an accident or a mistake was actually a blessing and the next level of learning.
So wonderful. So let's then proceed to talk about Michael Singer's ideas. As I mentioned before, he went on to create it from this little compound that people kept coming to. They were building their own little huts, and finally he somehow or another started computer programming, created this program by himself in the woods when he wasn't meditating, that helped medical doctors, medical offices bill patients. And that computer program grew and grew and grew into, on this hermitage, in this little house that they built for this business, into what eventually was $1 billion company, but which also faltered mid-success because one of the leaders that they trusted had pulled them into some fraudulent activities, and Michael Singer had to go to court, which really tested his theories about allowing life to do life.
Right.
I mean, even he admitted to being distressed when his whole reputation of integrity and honesty and love and personal growth was challenged by someone who hadn't done any of that work and drew him into a very dark period of besmirching his reputation and possibly closing down his life, ultimately, he won. And the book is really interesting because it's really a life story.
Yeah.
And that's somehow how I can see better how to use these ideas that he has come forth with.
Right.
So talk about the ideas. Talk about them in a nutshell and how we can incorporate them in our lives.
Well, I mean, I would just suggest, spending some time in meditation. And it's not to get rid of our thoughts, it's just to observe the thoughts that, the thoughts a lot of times are not our thoughts. And getting aware of your body, because when you're downloaded with an inspiration, it's different than a programming or a thought.
Yes.
You almost like when you have a thought, you can almost feel it up in your head up here, and it's not
right. When you say thoughts, the things we're doing, like, oh man, I know I'm meditating, but I need to get to the grocery store, and somebody's coming later, and blah blah blah. I didn't do that right. I was mean to that person. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So when you meditate, you clear the path for.
And intention is, another thing. When we have tension in our body, which we have stored in our body, we have,
entire lifetimes of tension.
Oh
stored within.
yeah. So the increased tension in our body decreases our awareness. So working on literally. Walking around and saying, oh, where am I feeling my knees? Oh, I feel it in my knees. Can I just put my attention on that and let go of that tension that I'm feeling there? I was saying today on the way over, I have something going on in my life, and I'm driving over and I'm noticing that I'm moving my hand like this, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh, breathe, just breathe. And just at that moment, Ariana Grande's song came on the radio, "Breathe," and she's singing it, and I was like, "Wow, what a coincidence! That was being in flow."
Yes.
Okay,
that was more synchronicity than it was a coincidence. I think. To remind you to breathe.
Yeah, and that okay, this is life.
I think when we clear out some of our chatter and some of our fears, and we allow a little bit more of life to be life, and remember that we have something to learn from everything. Some philosophers have said, whatever occurs, to love that, because it all brings lessons in evolution. It's not fun, and sometimes it's great fun, like as you described, when all of a sudden a pop singer said, hey, knock it off. But I also think that, so we talked about trying to attend to and release the fear, the tension, the chatter, to maybe just be the observer of the chatter and allow it to kind of float away.
Sure, yeah.
And what else?
I have really learned to recognize when I'm making a decision that's motivated by fear versus trusting that there's a deeper place within myself that I can make a decision from. And when they say we lead with our heart, it has to be that we've let go of the emotion, the reactive emotion that's going on. Most people say, oh, I'm gonna, they think leading with the heart is responding to that reactive emotion, but it's really the feeling underneath the emotion.
And how do you get there?
You learn to look at the emotion, okay? See that this is my ego reacting versus or a programmed belief, tension from the past. I mean, there doesn't have to be any judgment around it. Just know that, put your awareness on it. If there's something that has to be adjusted, that feeling below will direct you, but it will not hurt the other people. It will be done in love. Even if it's about putting a boundary up, it still will be done with love for yourself too.
I like that.
Okay, so we have to include ourselves too in our journey. We're always outwardly helping everybody else, and we exclude ourselves then.
And also, when you say, I've got to love, people forget they have to love inward as well, and love the parts of themselves that struggle and tap the steering wheel, because there's so much going on in their lives. Their fingers are responding.
Right.
And it's a beautiful idea that there is synchronicity that then occurs when we clear the path.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened to all of us. I know where you allow and you accept. I like to tell that story, and I've told it a couple of times in this place, but I love it so much that one day I heard Oprah and Caroline Myss, your teacher. Caroline is a best-selling author, medical intuitive. She's brilliant, spiritual philosopher, and we, of course, all know who Oprah is. I heard them talking in my office. I was in another room. And so when I went in, my computer was closed. When I opened it, it was a video of Oprah and Caroline Myss discussing releasing expectations, allowing, and letting life be life. And I couldn't help but be delighted and amused by that. It's never happened since. It's never happened before that. But somebody clearly felt I needed to do a little letting go. And in that particular interview, Carolyn said, that the worst thing you can do for yourself is hold on to a dream that doesn't belong to you. So with that, I'm trying to release some of the things that I haven't yet gotten to, things that I want to do with my life still, and kind of allow in that empty space for a more creative, more synchronistic, more flow-based idea to pop in.
Right.
Without expectation that it will, but just making the field fertile for that kind of thing to happen.
Yeah, or just something shows up in your life that is going to maybe take your time a little bit, and you're supposed to, move forward in that area. So yeah, I mean, I think his book really helped me understand a little bit more, and also reflect on my life, and to really show me and be appreciative of some of the hard things that came up in my life, and now looking back saying, I was so in flow. That was exactly what was supposed to happen.
Yes.
And that helps me just kind of like release the whole past and say, no, everything's been perfect. It's been perfect.
That is probably one of the hardest things that we all learn to do for our evolution, is to let that go. That was another time and another place. The future is coming in, but it is unshaped.
Right.
And so all the fear we have around that, all the worry about what's coming, would be better served if you released that and kind of stilled the chatter in your head, and found an activity like brushing a horse, or walking your dogs, or watching some fish. I don't know why those are all animal based, but clearly animals are in our lives.
Nature.
And nature to help us find that peaceful center where we can stop the chatter and just be. And it is apparently the place of our highest potential evolution if we can tend to that.
Yeah. So ultimately, we all want more possibilities in life, in health, and in wealth. So, surrender. Connect
it may
more
be
to
the
source.
place. It may be the place where
Open
it
the
all
fountain,
happens.
right?
Open the fountain. Connect the hose to the ocean.
Yes,
Any of those
exactly.
things will do.
Yeah.
Allow, let go of expectation, and see what beautiful things the future can bring.
Yeah.
Or lessons, which also will be coming in. But if you see them as something to benefit your evolution, that might be just the ticket to surviving them well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're done here.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Come again soon, please, and we'll be here just talking away.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.